Hey out there, welcome to my channel. I'm JD. Please subscribe, please hit a like. So what do I got here? I got what I was working on before was the ball clock. So this is a clock that had two sides of it that were a glass ball. In the middle was the movement holder, and one side of the ball provided magnification of the dial. Now this spring here was what the spring it came in, and it was more or less set. So I bought another spring, but the spring I got, it was just a little bit weaker than this spring, but not much. But it is a clock spring, and it came all wound up in a wire. Now the problem with this spring that I've got to solve is that the end here was relatively straight, and I've got to make that contour to be able to grip on to the arbor, right? So I can't have it basically I can't have it too round, but I got to have it round enough to be able to grip onto the arbor and go around. So I'm looking at the original and saying, well, can I make the original like this one? So it's a little bit tricky. So I'm going to kind of take the original and map it and say, okay, this is the original, this is the one I'm mapping to it, and how far off from the original is it? I've got these pliers here, which I think are absolutely necessary to do that, and they'll provide me some curvature. So I want to actually curve this thing around, and the way to do that, let me move all this stuff out of the way, including the arbor, is that you need to put it inside the pliers and then squeeze it, and this thing here will shape that spring. So that's half the problem. So if I grip it up high like this, it's going to put less of a curve on it, and if I press less, it's going to put less of a curve on it. Now I'm hoping that I've got that this spring in general is going to be flexible enough for me to be able to bend it without it cracking. So that's another problem I have with this. So I'm going to grab it like this and try to bend it without it cracking. It's kind of twisting it a bit as I bend it, but I can't avoid that with these pliers. So I'm going to just do that and then kind of try to shape it around. And if I know if I bend it too hard, that it will not work. You got to kind of work it like that, and then hopefully I got enough of a bend on this to be able to grab the arbor, kind of like this. So I'm going to work on that for a while. This is kind of what it looks like now. Let me just show you from this side here. I'll move the camera around so it's bent downward. Let me just move that in like that and bend it straight down. And there's what I have right now. And it's a little tighter than it needs to be. So it's like that. And I think I want a little more of a curve here so I don't lose it from the arbor. And I want to straighten this up just a bit. Now I can straighten that up with regular pliers. So these are the regular pliers that I use, and they're basically flat pliers because they've got no ridges here or anything, so they're pretty safe to use. And I can take this and go for the wider part of it and then squeeze in it just a bit like that. Sort of like that, and then look and see what I've got. That's pretty darn close, but I want to have another little bend right there. Not much of one, but a little bit of a bend right there. And that'll allow it to shape properly around the arbor, because you don't want it to slip from the arbor. So it's right around here where I want to bend that in, and I'm going to have to do that, positioning it a different way. Alright, this is scary stuff because if you break it, then you got to start all over again, which is no fun at all. So I'm looking where the curve is here, and I'm trying to exact where I'm going to push in a little bit. And I'm doing this without tempering the spring at all. Because I want it to grab on, but I don't want it to snap. And this is not easy to do, by the way. So there we go there. And I'm looking at it right now, and I've got a pretty good bend on it, although I want it to bend a little tiny bit. That's pretty close. Pretty close, but I need to put a little bit of a bend kind of right here. And I'm just using hand pressure here to regulate how far down I'm getting on this bend. So kind of right there. I've got a little bit of an angle here, so I want to flatten that out just a bit. Just a bit. So that's pretty darn good right there. So if I go down on the camera here like this, you'll see that I'm pretty close. There's what I have right now. And that's pretty close to the original. Now if I put the arbor inside there, when this rolls around inside the barrel, the question is it going to fit? So that's this like this, and I can see where the jobby doohickey nubby is, and it's on that side. So it would be going kind of like that. It would fit in like this. So I'm not going to shove that in because I want it to spring into place when I finalize it, right? So that's kind of like in there like that. I'm not going to put that in there though. So, but I know I've got a good turn on that, like that. I may want to put another little tiny bit of a turn down the other end here, so I can get some control over the curve, because I don't want to lose the curve as it goes around. So, but I also don't want to take any of the temper off of this. So let me just tell you, it's like so much control over this. It's probably one of the harder things to do with a watch is to shape the spring around the arbor. It's not easy, and I'm assuming that's going to catch right now and not cause a problem, because it's going to have to go around like that once it catches. So, and there's the phone. Now the second part of the problem is this side here. Now, this side here it's basically bent over with a little bit of it sticking out to allow it to grab the barrel edge, right? So this obviously is not like that. It seems to be fairly pliable though. I'm not sure if that's good or not, because usually a spring springs back. But if I'm able to bend this into shape, right, without it breaking, usually I would heat that up, temper it, and then bend it over. So I don't know whether I can actually bend this over without it breaking, but I'm not super concerned, because it's going to have to, like there's the one end, and it's going to spiral around until it gets inside the barrel, like that. And then this end is going to have to turn inward to catch. So if I do this and just bend it in, I'm just praying it doesn't break right now. Like that. And I know that if I press hard on this part here, it's likely going to crack. But if I just try to give it a bit of, bend it a bit, and what I would normally do is temper that and then bend it. So why don't we do that so I can rest assured that it's going to be solid in there. I'll just put a bit of a temper on there, although it feels like it's been tempered. It doesn't feel crackable, but I know if I squeeze down on that, I'm going to get trouble. So let's temper that just a bit. So here I've got my butane torch, which is always good for tempering, and a pair of pliers to squeeze down on it. And I'm going to wear some gloves, and this is just going to protect my fingers from the heat, if in fact the heat transfers down that far. I don't think it will, but I'm going to try it anyway. And when I turn the torch on, I'm going to try to make sure I don't point it towards stuff on my table here that's going to indirectly heat up. So I got to watch myself very carefully when I do this. So move back a bit when I do it, and just go like this with my camera, move back a bit, and then lay some heat on this thing. It's pretty good right there. I'm tempering it to red. I could always mix up tempering and annealing, but making it red. So that's pretty darn good right there. That's good. And now I need to twist the inside upward. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm putting my tweezers inside here, trying to get them to the edge here, and then move them out a bit. And if I can bend that a bit to give it a lip, then that lip will catch on the barrel. So do that, and then bend that a bit to give it that lip. So it's got a little bit of a lip there. Don't give me no lip. There we go. So there's the lip I wanted. Right there. And now I want to make sure that when this goes into the barrel, it doesn't break, it doesn't snap. So I'm a bit concerned about that as well. So now I'm going to feed this into the barrel by hand and see if that works. So here's the barrel. And now I'm going to take this and feed this in. And with any luck, I can roll this spring into the barrel and not cause too much of a problem. I may have to go a little bit off the camera to do this because it's a tricky job. I'm not sure about this spring because it's a spring for a clock, and I was told by another watchmaker, hey buddy, use a spring for a clock and you'll have no problems at all, it'll work fine. So this is a clock spring that I'm rolling into a watch barrel, and basically this watch is a clock by every, it is basically an alarm clock for a desk. So I'm rolling this in now. And I need to focus. I'm going to turn this off for a second. So there it is in the barrel right now. And the only thing I can think of, the only problem I think I could have is this, the end piece here needs to grab the arbor properly. I'm not sure how that'll work. It might be fine once I put this, slide the arbor in it and move the whole spring over. I am not absolutely sure. I may have to adjust the spring again to get some of it closer because it looks like it's a little bit off. It should go down a bit, but I'm not sure if I can do that with this spring. Hard to say, hard to say. So there it is there. And there's the notch right there. And if I line the notch up here, am I able to move the spring over enough to line up with the arbor hole? So I'm going to put a screwdriver in here, and that might allow me to move it over a bit. I think there's going to be some farting with this required to make this work. Yeah, it's kind of almost there, but not quite. I think I'm going to need a bit of a bend on the inner circle again to move it outward this way more, so it centers in the arbor. So I think if I pull it over like this, there may be too much stress on the edge, and it might not wind it up properly. I don't know, so I may have to take this thing out and put a bend right around there to move it upward. So let's just do that. I can pull this spring out, kind of walk it out the same way I walked it in, but very carefully, because it's going to friggin' go boom on me. So I'm going to walk it out and put a bend on the end. So I actually walked it halfway out and put the bend on so I wouldn't have to start this winding again. I just held it while I bent it. Again, I don't know if it's bent enough to work, but I'm going to try it anyway. Just roll it in. I got my glasses on because if you can take your eye out on this thing if you don't watch out. So you should either wear safety glasses or have some kind of glasses on. Now it's not out far enough. It needs to be out a bit further. It needs to be right about there, which would be perfect, right? So I might be able to force bend it here a bit. This is the arbor. I can tell which side the arbor needs, where the arbor needs to be on this. This is tricky as hell. If I bend it and then put a piece of pegwood in, maybe I can hold it in place. Kind of like that. And if that's enough, is it going to be able to grab the goes in like this? Yeah, I may have to figure something else out here because that's not thick enough to move it over. I think the bend needs to be right here. It needs to be out further. It needs to be right about there. Also, it won't go in. The other thing I could try to do is try to put the arbor in and then put the spring in with the arbor. This is tricky stuff, but if my bend is right back here, right, that should move the whole bunch of it over a bit. So let me pull this out again and see if I can make a bend right here. I'm trying to pull it out as carefully as possible because it's temperamental. And when I bend it, I got to make sure the pliers are in the right direction. And I don't want to snap this. Again, I don't know if that's enough to do the job. Probably is not. And if that's not the case, then I've got to temper this thing. It's pretty snug in there. It's got to move over like that. So is there a way that I can hold that in place while putting the arbor in? That's the question. The answer is almost no. I'm going to have, this is not easy. Not easy. Yeah, this is a tricky job. I got my fingernail in there, which might help. I'm not sure. Gee whiz, this is so hard. No, that didn't work. Gee whiz. Well, maybe if I feed it the hook in first and then push it all over, that might work. Oh, there we go. So I fed the hook in first, but I got to make sure that that is solid. And the only way to do that is to grab a vise. I'm not sure if you even saw what I did there, but there's the needle. So what I did is I fed the hook part in first. And now I'm going to grab the end of the arbor here with my vise very carefully and then tighten it. And then see if the hook stays in place. I don't know, this thing doesn't seem to want to grab it. This thing is threaded too, which is a little bit tricky because it's threaded. See if I can grab it with this maybe. Or maybe my pliers might work. Yeah, that's too tight. If I look at that with my lenses on here, yeah, it's got the hook, but is it gripping it enough? I certainly will know if the hook flies off. And I can see the barrel, this needs to go down a bit on this side here. So I'll take that and pound that down. So let's try that. Let's level that off a bit. Now I got a stake from the staking set, and the trick here is that this area here where it hooks onto the edge of the barrel needs to be low enough to put the cap on. So I've got to tap that down, and it looks like it's too high, so that's not good. But I should be able to tap it down just using a stake here. Actually, I just pushed it down with my hands, so I may not have to do any banging. Now, there's a little tiny bit of it sticking up. It's not too bad. It's pretty tight, though. I'm going to look at this barrel, like this spring width is exactly 30. Now if I look at this, is it the right, is it down enough? Friggin' close. It's almost down enough. And I'm going to tap the rest of this too, so it's not the perfect situation, but I needed to get a spring that was the right size for the right strength, so I wouldn't have issues with it. Yeah, this is tight. Not sure if this will work. Sort of looks good there. Alright, I'm going to put a little bit of oil on this and then close the barrel and see if that closes for me, which I hope it does. I know the spring will slip a little because the hook is on the other side of that, so, but when it spins around it should catch the notch on the inside of the barrel, so it shouldn't be a problem. It looks like the last watchmaker also had some issues with this, so I can see by the pounding that the last watchmaker did on this whole thing, right? So it looks like it's had a bit of a personality shift here to get this thing together and snapped in. There we go. That's good there. I think that's good right there. So that's in the barrel now, and it's on the hook and in the barrel. So I think that's, yeah, and I'm looking to see if it's flat, and it's absolutely flat, which is nice. So there we go. So that's the video for today. I couldn't do this with gloves on. I don't know any watchmaker that can actually grab all this and do the force you need with gloves on. And my thumbnail was long on this hand, which I think was really handy. And I know I trim it occasionally, but it gets cracked and stuff because it's handy with pocket watch work to have that long thumbnail. So now I'm going to reassemble the watch and wind it and see if this thing actually works. So now I've got to put some of this together, and it gets tricky, especially when you drop the parts. So I know these parts go like this in here, and they go inside like this. And I know the bottom one, the lever here, has got to move out like that. So I think I might be able to move that out to arrange it properly, because it would be like this inside the watch movement, because that would be able to move kind of like that, right? So, but I've got to put the plate on, and let me just throw in the mainspring barrel like this, and then I can put the plate on top, and with any luck all this stuff will hold in place. No, no luck at all. If it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. So I got to move this out a bit. Again, move it back like that. And then hold this down somehow without moving it. While I put the plate back on. So I know that for this small screw, I believe the small screw goes on the end here, and that's the screw that I had to find to replace everything. And let me just put that in to start with. It goes in like that, and then the other two screws, very carefully do this again. They go in here, and then I'll move my hand out of the way. Here, and then the other one goes in right here. Let me just put this in, and I want to flip the movement around to make sure that that crown gear is in the right place. So I just flip that around and have a look at what I got here. And it looks sort of okay. It's a bit tight. There we go. So that's good there. That's moving. And then if you take a small screwdriver and push on the end here, and that's where this would be to set the time. This would push downward on that, right? I think that's where it pushes. Yeah, there's a lever there. I got to use a bigger screwdriver, I think. There, and that would go like this, and then that gear then interfaces with this gear here for setting the time. That's how that works. So all this stuff has been oiled in the past, so I think I'm okay. So what I'm going to do, seeing that it all seems to be together, is I'm going to tighten it a little bit more. And I know it's going to scare me when I wind this, because I'm going to wind it up, and likely it's going to snap because I don't think the edge was completely aligned perfectly with the barrel. So there's where the ratchet wheel goes. Move the click spring out of the way. See if I can set it in here. Come on. There we go. No, there we go. So I want to put that down in here, and this kind of just screws in, which is really weird. I don't think I've ever seen a watch before that has the ratchet wheel screwing in like that. So I'm not going to tighten it completely right now, but because I want to wind the watch now and see if it ticks. And I know it's going to slip on the outside, or I just think it slipped on the outside until it hits the edge of that. I'm hoping it's winding right now. And there we go. We have success. So that's a new mainspring in here. And I got to tell the owner that if you wind this thing right to the edge, I'm not sure what'll happen. It was an interesting adventure. And my name's JD, and thanks for watching my channel.